we will be happy to send that recording off to you. So this is AscendixRE Enterprise Edition. For those of you who've been on past webinars, we've covered a great deal of ground here over the last 6 months or so. The initial Salesforce offering, which is xRE Foundations, is almost a presumption that you've been to that past webinar. I'm going to cover some of that in this, but this is about the Enterprise Edition for xRE. I'm going to give a brief introduction of Ascendix. We'll get into a brief product portfolio overview, and then position the xRE Enterprise Edition for Salesforce, talk a little bit about the future webinar that we're going to have, and hand it over to Q&A. So I know that some of you have been on the phone on past webinars, and this is old hat for you, but for those who haven't, I do want to give you a quick overview. We've been in actually business longer than 17 years. I need to update the slide, but all of which have been in the CRM space, the last 10 of which have been in the commercial real estate sector. Along the while, we've actually created products for the commercial real estate sector on CRM, one call for the dynamic CRM platform, and certainly here recently we've put a bunch of energy into the Salesforce.com platform. AscendixRE is the name of the product, and based here in Dallas. 70+ employees, and as you can imagine, we're pretty deep partners with both Microsoft and Salesforce. Quick slide here showing a subset of the customers that we have using the platform. They vary in size and in discipline, multi-thousand users down to 1 or 2 users that are leveraging the platform on both the Salesforce.com and Dynamics platforms. So let's talk a little bit about the product portfolio. We've got in the center the CRM platforms, both Dynamics CRM and Salesforce. The lion's share of today is going to be on Salesforce, 99% of it. But in the center is the Salesforce platform, and the publisher provided user interfaces like Outlook and the web browsers and their mobile solutions are available. But in addition, we've also extended the commercial real estate applicability by having our own version of an iPhone and iPad application that actually now with the Enterprise Edition of Salesforce are integrated. In addition, we've got a super powered search engine, which is an alternative interface for accessing the CRM data inside of Salesforce. And if you were on webinars here recently, you learned about our Composer, which is a publication facility allowing that rich information that's been housed inside of CRM, property data, listing and availability data to be generated into brochures and microsites. And now with the xRE Enterprise Edition, you've got native integration to that tool. And so this is our product wheel, and we're going to be spending a good bit of time around all of that now that we've got the Enterprise Edition available. Just to put some background on this, the first edition was released 6 months ago. That was the xRE Foundations. It came out at $49 a user, again targeting small work groups that don't have real exotic requirements and are just looking for basic building blocks and blocking and tackling concepts. So now we've got the xRE Enterprise that takes all of that foundational functionality but then adds on top of it, which is what we're going to focus on. And it comes in at $79 a user and is going to be available late Q2, essentially June. So obviously targeting larger firms who have a little bit deeper and wider requirement sets. And let's get into it. So the xRE Enterprise features, we've got all the xRE Foundation capabilities there: companies, contacts, property tracking, listing, availability, leases. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that today. It's all in there, if you will. What we're going to focus on today is commission tracking. Now have the ability to add external and internal commissionable entities associated with deals, so you can see who's getting paid what, and what the company is getting in terms of net commissions. Lease period tracking. We didn't have that in the Foundations Edition, and now we have the ability through having simple things like the lease expiration and commencement date, the term, the square footage, and the rate to be able to go out there and calculate the lease periods, whether those are flat or stepped, and so we'll walk through that. Talked about xRE Composer. It's important to know that although the integration exists with the Enterprise Edition, there is still a separate subscription. So the integration's there, but whether it's usable or not is based on whether you have an active subscription or not. Integration with xRE For iPad and iPhone, again, we've had webinars on those, and so I'm not going to go into great detail, but know that you now have those as a part of the bundled price. So if you were looking for an alternative mobile strategy and mobile solution, the Enterprise Edition for Salesforce will be a great fit for you. And then maybe the hardest one to get your arms around is this SmartClient concept. And again, the way I would look at it is it's a supercharged search engine for your data, all the data inside of the Salesforce database. In the future, not yet available to show, is stacking plans. That will be a part of that $79 per user per month price, as well as some additional map searching capabilities. Along that same line, we're going to have lease and sale comp analysis and preference matching. And those are things that are going to be target of our next webinar, which we'll talk about down the road. Again, for those who did not get to attend the Foundations Edition, I have embedded in this PowerPoint, not for us to go through in glorious detail on this particular call, but for purposes of having it available to you when you do get this recorded video and webinar down the road. You'll have that for reference. But it does give you a side-by-side of what's included in Foundations and what's included in Enterprise. And it's those things that are just in Enterprise that we're going to spend the rest of today on. So with that said, let's hop into it. So I'm in the Salesforce client, and you'll see we've got our traditional Home tab available to us. Just as a matter of navigation, you've got your ever-present search facility here that goes across all objects in the database. We've got our tabs that give us the major functional areas of the product, from dashboards all the way to reports. Our breadcrumb trail, otherwise known as recent items, allowing us to see what records we visited through our computing session. The ever-present create new option, allowing us to create new deals, availabilities, properties, even companies and contacts here without having to go and search for it. So the fundamentals, as we talked about, you've got your accounts and contacts. These are a cornerstone of CRM, and they exist here, as you would imagine. And Infinity Info Systems, company record associated with that are your contacts and so forth. Again, I'm not really going to drill into that, but focusing on some things that are specific to Enterprise Edition here. So let's talk about that from a properties perspective. If we drill into the Preston Park Financial Center, we'll see across the top there are a variety of secondary records, one of which is leases, and that brings us to the lease periods concept. So by hovering over the leases tab, it gives us availability to go in and create a new lease or look at an existing one. And for brevity and speed, we'll go ahead and drill into an existing lease that I've already created. Amongst all of the attributes related to the lease object, you've got unit name, you've got the upstream relationship with the property, but important in creating a lease period calculation is the square footage, which we have entered in. We also have the commencement and the expiration date. We need not even put in the months and duration because it gets auto-calculated if you don't put that in. So commencement date and expiration date have been entered in. We also have the lease rate. And at that point, we can denote, is it quoted annually or monthly, and is the rent flat or stepped? And depending on that selection, gives you the ability to go in there and put more details in terms of escalation type, whether that's percentage or amount. And depending on the selection, you have the ability to enter in the escalation amount or percentage, and all that gets factored in as well. Even more so, we have free rent capability. So if you've got a couple of free months of rent you've thrown in, those could also be calculated in. And all that gets put into the mathematical formula and ultimately renders this lease period schedule that you see above. One way to access the lease periods is as I'm doing here. You simply see the tab that is representative on all major objects. You can also scroll down and look at those lease periods there and do even some refining and fine-tuning after those have been calculated. And so just another layer of detail that we're entering in to round out the function and feature set of our Enterprise Edition. Navigating back up to the property, take a look at another piece, and that is the commission calculation capability. And so that revolves around deals. And so we go over to the Deals tab related to Preston Park. We see that there is one existent lease for Infinity Info. So we can drill into that particular deal. And amongst those particular attributes are also details that are necessary for computing and calculating commissions, the first of which is the gross deal value. And then we can assess, do we want to calculate the gross fee amount by a percentage or just a flat amount. And here we've actually put in by percent and put gross fee percentage of 3.5. It's gone out and actually calculated the commissionable monies that generate from this particular deal, in this case $43,750. Now all that's left to do is to see how all this gets divided up. And in this particular simple example, all we're really going to do is share this commission with two brokers, two inside brokers, and also reflect what their share is with the house. And so how we do that, after having calculated this and saved this header record for the deal, is to go up to the commissions tab at the top here, and you'll see that similar to other functional capabilities, you've got the action button that resides inside of this hover window, but you'll see that I've already created two commissionable entries here, one for Camille and one for myself. It shows here that we're both inside brokers, that we've got a net commission of $17,500, and that's based on our having split the commission 50-50, but also having given 20% to the house, both equal. Now, these fee percentages could change from broker to broker, and so too could the house split. But this happens to be just a very straight down the road calculation. If I drill into that particular form, you'll see some of the details: the company gross fee, total inside commission, the company net, and the net commission owed Camille based on the fact that she's sharing 50% of it with Wes, as well as giving 20% to the house. And so that same entry is available and visible for the record that was entered in for myself here. And so once all those commissionable entries get in and they're equal to 100%, all that comes back down and alters the financial and forecasting information, showing what the company is actually getting, as well as what the total inside commission is as well. So all those details are calculated for us now, and again are part of the xRE Enterprise Edition only, not in the foundations. And because those are all data, they're attributes and objects in the database, they now are available for reporting. So you could go in and create some interesting dashboards that allow you to do some comparative analysis across the brokerage community, who's generating the most deal flow, and what are they getting paid as a result of that. Of course, you get into some what's visible and what's not, and obviously you've got security modeling that you can put in place to make sure that only those eyes that you want to see the commissionable information see it. So that's the lease period calculation that's now new to Enterprise, and the commission tracking capabilities. What I also want to show you is the integration, the rather new and tight integration with our xRE Composer solution. And so if we were to, we've got an instance where somebody has expressed some interest in Preston Park Financial Center, and it's our desire to go out there and give them a leave behind, perhaps even email them a brochure on the property after having met them there. Certainly can print it out, but in this case what we're going to do is envision the request for a brochure for a particular property and even an availability within that property, and we want to generate that as an attached email to that particular individual. And so the first step here is to go in and find that property. In this case, I've simply done nothing more than select the view Texas office properties, and I've got that property, Preston Park Financial Center, targeted. Now if I wanted to go in there and create a brochure for multiple properties, I could do that, but in this simplistic example I'm just going to select one. You'll notice an action button here on the top portion of the screen. I click on that, and its Add to Workspace option is now available to me. And by virtue of having selected the property Preston Park Financial Center, it loads all of the relevant data associated with that property, in this case both Suite 2300 and 5300. I'm going to choose the 2300, which is the availability that the party had suggested that they wanted more information on. And after having selected that, I simply go to the action buttons in the lower portion here and click on the Create Brochure option. So this takes me through a wizard, and the next step is to select from a library of templates the actual brochure template that I want to have that property and availability data published into. And so I'll select this white and light blue brochure, and it gives me the option to go in there and preview that to make sure that that is in fact the format and the layout that I want. And after a brief review, we close that out and continue on. By clicking the Create Brochure option, it goes out and it effectively is merging that data, that property and availability data, with that selected template, and is going to now render that out on the screen for me to both preview and edit should I desire. And so in cases where there is a heavy load of data that you've asked to be pushed into a brochure, there are some message boxes that will pop up that will allow you to go in and enter your email address so you can continue on working, and it will notify you that it has been completed. In this case, rather quickly because it's just one property and availability, at which point I can go in and select the preview option. You can see that it's loaded a nice little high-definition image in there for me, but we've got some other things that we could clean up and need to before we actually send it out. So essentially what it's done here is it's all the data that's been put into the Salesforce application goes out there, and it's got data tags for those data elements that it expects to see. And if it doesn't have any, then you've got the ability to go in there and override that manually, or go back into the Salesforce system and populate that data and re-render or re-merge the actual template. In this case, we'll go ahead and hit the Edit button just to show you how you can go in there and do some editing. I like the image above. I don't think I need to change that, but I am going to go in there and modify an interior image. And through the image library, we'll select this particular interior image, and I'll position it with a fill. And at that point, I've got now a really nice looking graphic up here and down here. And if I wanted to make other tweaks to the text or other areas, I could do that. For speed, again, we'll just kind of leave it at that. And you'll see how it's now taking those modifications that we entered in our edit mode and are now presenting it here. We can go in and hit the download button, at which point you'll see that the PDF is now being rendered. Hit open. And for that matter, we could even go in and save that and email it if we wanted to here, and that's certainly an option. Or we can send it off and have it recorded in Salesforce. And so we go into the property. We'll see that there is a section of all the compositions that have been generated for Preston Park Financial Center. And I'll just grab this particular one. And if I hit the send button within the context of that grid, it will generate an outbound send an email form, at which point all I really need to do is simply click on the lookup facility to highlight the recipient, in this case Wes Snow, brochure for Preston Park Financial Center. If I want to put a body in there, I can, and you'll notice that it's already attached the brochure to that outbound email. I click on send, and now I can go on to my next task. And so that's the idea of our brochure or our composer tool, is to allow you to leverage all that data that's centralized, bounce out, leverage the tool, and then come back into where you started. So we've talked about lease periods, we've talked about commission calculation, we've talked about the composer integration. Now I want to talk a little bit about, very briefly, but a little bit about the integration that we have with the iPad and the iPhone. Again, just for those who have maybe not recall what we're talking about, we've generated a native iOS application that works on both the iPad and the iPhone. And so let me just bring this reflection of my iPad up on the screen here. You'll notice that on the left-hand side, we have our navigation that shows you all the major areas that we're pushing out and exposing to the iPad. You'll notice that there's a nice little one-to-one relationship between those areas and what you've seen in the xRE Foundations and Enterprise Edition. We've got our companies, we've got our contacts, properties, listings, availabilities, and so forth. Properties being kind of the highlight here. One of the hallmarks of the iPad application that goes beyond what you would see with any of the platform mobile solutions is this enhanced searching capability, and it's important to know that because it's kind of the underpinning of why the SmartClient, which we're about to talk about, exists in the first place. And so you've got this property scenario where if I wanted to, I could go in and just do a search on a particular property name. However, if I had all of the properties available to me, I could go in and actually filter using some of these faceted filters. And so if I were to unselect that, we'll see that all of the properties in the database present themselves. So I go back to the property type, we'll see that we've got a number of property types available. And if I really only wanted to look at office properties, I could select that, hit save, automatically filters the properties down to just those that are type office, and then could further filter that down to, well, just give me only those properties that are owned by Griffin Partners. And at that point, with very little complexity, I'm able to go out there and get a winnowed set of properties, and then I can simply highlight that and view the details of that property from left to right with these various tabs that you see here in the center. Got some ability to turn the laptop or the iPad around and show this to a prospective investor and or tenant. So it does a really good job of turning this application into both available for internal and external constituents. With that said, that's the iPad. Again, this isn't about going full bore into the iPad, but I wanted to at least let you know that with the xRE Enterprise Edition, this particular option is available to you in addition to the Salesforce One platform. The other thing is the SmartClient. Again, let me go back to this particular slide here that talks about the wheels. So Outlook integration was covered in our Foundations edition. We've talked a lot about what's comprised in the web client, and we've bounced over here to the iPhone and the iPad solution. Now we're talking about the SmartClient, and as I mentioned earlier, it is taking some of that searching capability that you saw on the iPad and now making it available on a desktop client. And so you see on the left-hand side, we've got the same concept here: companies, contacts, listings, properties. This is connected to the Salesforce database, so as updates are made to Salesforce, they're reflected here, and vice versa. As updates are made to this particular UI, they're reflected in the Salesforce database. So analogous to what we showed on the iPad, we've got the ability to do searches here. This faceted searching capability is available. So you saw earlier where I selected the properties and was able to go in there and say, just give me those properties that are of type office that actually are owned by Griffin Partners, and that same concept is now available on the desktop. Having highlighted the property, I've made available a variety of other data elements, including the map that's associated with that property, any of the images, a stacking plan, opportunities, availabilities, and so on. So again, not to belabor the point on the SmartClient, because we've had separate webinar sessions there. Really what the Enterprise Edition is kind of this consolidator of all of those investments that we've been making over the last 2 years into one platform. So you get the power of the Salesforce platform, chatter, dashboards, company contact management, and all the commercial real estate specificity. But then in addition to that, all the lessons that we've learned over the last 10 years that have been brought to bear with tools like the xRE iPhone and iPad solution, the SmartClient, and now integration with the Composer. So that's what's available in Enterprise, and you've got that Foundations edition always. That could be a kind of a building block to getting to Enterprise, but wanted to share that with you today. So that's really what I wanted to present in terms of net new content. The future webinar topic, as I mentioned early at the outset, we're going to talk about those things that are not yet presentable and demonstrable, stacking plans, some quick search capabilities with map-based searching. You've seen, for those of you in the past, Polygon technology being brought in, allowing you to use a map as a search engine. Lease and sale comp analysis, we're bringing that in, as well as preference matching, where we can jot down a few details about someone's interest in either investment property or lease space and be able to match those preferences with inventory in the database. And so that's the future webinar topic. We've not yet settled on a date, but look for that shortly, as I'm sure you expect from Camille now. And with that said, I'm going to pop it on over to the Q&A session here, being respectful of your time, and see if I can't answer any of the questions that might have been generated from the content published. Camille, any questions?
Okay. Yes, we do have some questions, and just a reminder, if you have a question, use the Q&A panel of GoToWebinar. If it's not popped out, just look in the upper right-hand corner and you'll see a place to expand that. I'm going to combine some questions because there was some overlap. So the first question is, can you review the mobile options available to those subscribing to Enterprise, and is it an app in the Apple Store, or do you sign in through Salesforce?
Yeah, so let me pop back over here to this. So when we first started out developing our applications, there wasn't the robust community of mobile platforms for either Salesforce or Dynamics, and so we created our own iOS application that was available on the iPhone and the iPad. And that's still an investment that we're making today, and we still believe it to be a necessary investment because of its specificity to the commercial real estate sector. All the while, though, Salesforce has now brought out a Salesforce One platform that is another option. It's got more of a platform look and feel. What I mean by that is that it's kind of generic in its shell. It's not been optimized for commercial real estate functionality. There are other things that exist on the Salesforce platform that make their way out to that particular mobile offering. And so what that exercise is kind of culling all of that is not commercial real estate specific out of it and only leaving behind that which is relevant. So that's one difference. The other is that we really believe that when you're out on a mobile tool that you need to have advanced searching capabilities. This is not just companies and contacts that exist on this mobile app, but it's a really rich set of data, properties, listings, availabilities. And if you don't have really rich searching tools, it becomes overwhelming. And so that's the other reason that we're committed to our native iOS applications, because they have search tools that are outpacing those that are available from the publisher. The application is available on the App Store. It's also available, the Salesforce One application, let me be very, very specific. It's available for public consumption on the App Store. It also is downloadable on the Google Play Store in that it supports Android. That's another difference in what we're doing. We're native iOS only, and so it is not available for Android devices. And moreover, when you deploy it, we actually have a Apple business store that we push our product through. So although it goes through Apple's store, it's not the public-facing store that we're used to, but more the business center. So those are the differences there. And if you'd like a deeper dive, we can set a sidebar together and talk about those.
Okay, I'm also going to combine questions again regarding SmartClient. When do you envision people using the SmartClient versus traditional Salesforce interface that we've created? And is there a different login for that?
Sure. So you'll see this outer band of this particular graphic here. Over the last 10 years, we've seen kind of this evolution of two camps. That's not an absolute. It's not that you're in one or the other, but two ends of the spectrum. There's a consumption-oriented group of users, and there's a creation-oriented group of users. And you don't really design user interfaces the same for both of those particular constituents. If you're a consumer, i.e. you're searching for data, you're wanting information that's presented in more of almost a newspaper style. It's just there to read. Whereas if you're a creator, you're looking up information, but you want the forms to be laid out in a way that allow you to go in there and edit the data and modify and even add additional records. And so when we developed the SmartClient, it was looked at and positioned as a tool that would be really for the consumer, search-based and consumption layout of forms and so forth, versus the web browser. Yes, there are search tools that are available inside of Salesforce, but they're not as rich and robust as we've developed. And again, they're satisfying both the consumer and the creator in those forms. And so the SmartClient is really almost an insulator for those who never really see themselves as ones that are going to create the information, but see themselves as needing a supercharged Google-like search engine to go in there and get down to the very specific and fine-tuned details that a business circumstance requires and calls for.
Okay. Here, another one. What are the costs associated with subscriptions to Composer, and is there a cost for that plugin? So it's kind of a mixed question as well. Yeah,
so the integration is already there. If you're not subscribing to the Composer tool, then it lie dormant, really. It's just there and it won't be turned on, so to speak. However, if you are a subscriber, the integration is there. There's nothing you have to install per se. I anticipated the question, so I went ahead and put the pricing of xRE Composer subscriptions here on the back end. The way this works, as is true with some other marketing tools, is that you're you're projecting what your publication consumption is going to be on an annual basis, and that gives you an ability to go in and determine how many or what band you fit into. Are you quick start, where you're only going to be doing 150 publications on an annual basis, all the way up to enterprise grade, 2,500 publications a year, and that's both brochures and microsites. And you see that although we've annualized the number, we've put this into a monthly subscription number, so you can see how it goes that way. And as you step up, there are other things that we do, and one of which is custom brochure development. As you get into these higher end versions, we'll go in there and actually take your logos, take your color palettes and your disclaimer language, and help set up to, in this case on the far right, up to 30 templates that can reside in your library and be available for your end users. So that's the Composer subscription pricing, but the add-on, so to speak, is already embedded in the application.
Okay. I'm going to go back to SmartClient West. Is there a login that is specific for SmartClient? How do you access?
Yeah, so the same username and password that you use to log into the Salesforce web application, you'd use that for the SmartClient as well. So you're not having to remember two username and passwords.
Okay. And is there a monthly minimum for using Composer per month? How does that work, month to month? And is there a minimum?
So it's just this lowest band. Whether you're doing 1 or 150, you fit into that band there. So it's a max number. You can publish as few as you like, but that's the minimum that we're putting in their band, that first band.
Okay. With Composer, can you make your own templates, and then can you see if somebody opened the brochure or clicked through the microsite?
So first question, yes. The Composer tool actually has an administrative tool in it. So although we will have a handful of brochures and brochure and microsite templates available for you to go in there and modify, you could also build one from the ground up, and that's also included in that subscription. So you've got the authoring tool as well as the end user tool. As it relates to the second question, in the case of microsites, there is this concept of forms that are embedded in those microsites, so that if somebody were to submit their name to that would come back in the way of a lead back into the system, and so that is supported out of the box. There is a future plan for clicks and things of that nature, but at present it's really relegated to having forms that are embedded in those that allow you to determine who's visiting that particular content that you publish out on the web.
Okay. Another question that just rolled in, and again, a reminder, if you have a question, use the Q&A portion of GoToWebinar, and we'll address them now, but you can also email me later with questions. Is Composer based on WordPress? Can you talk about how we created that?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that question. I can tell you it wasn't created using WordPress. Composer is a custom developed application, but it's not using WordPress, nor is it pushing out WordPress documents. It's XML, HTML, rich HTML files that are being pushed out there, and/or PDF. So that's about as technical as I can get with you. And if you've got deeper questions and so forth, we can get the appropriate resources. But that's about as far as I can go with you today.
That's usually about the answer I give as well. Okay. I think that we are out of questions for now. I just want to remind everybody I'm going to be posting this webinar on our YouTube channel, but I'll give everybody who registered for this event first dibs on it, as well as the link to the build versus buy document, which we believe is pretty interesting. You'll also now officially get all the invitations to future webinars. Les, do you have anything you'd want to add to that?
No, I think most importantly, if you go back to this comparative grid, this is something that, if you like, we can actually send to you in an attachment, and it does give you a little bit more of an all-encompassing spreadsheet view of all the features and allow you to see this in the full context. We kind of hacked up the review of both Foundations and Enterprise into 2 webinars, and you might be leaving going, wow, it's really just commission calculation and lease periods and that's about it. No, there's a lot that's in the Foundations edition we didn't talk about. So that might be something that you just kind of have a mental note of. And I think what it might do, Camille, is go ahead and just alongside sending the PowerPoint, we send that comparison document as well.
Absolutely. That's a good idea, yes.
But that's, if there are any other questions, that's what I had for today. Thanks again for your attendance, and hopefully you found this to be compelling, and we're looking forward to receiving your feedback and continuing on the journey with you.
Thanks, Wes.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.